It is time.
The script is written, so we have pages of script, which we're taking, for a scene or a sequence, and then give it out to the story artist and actually talk it through. And then they go away and draw it up as sort of, it's sort of comic strip style. And then we come back and meet and look at what's been done and then really work with it. It's very sort of sculptural because you're actually working with material in front of you and you actually deal with whether the ideas are coming across in the boards, and you sort of build in levels.
They're really flexible, so you can take out that which isn't working, that would keep what is, build on it, and there are idea sessions. As every time we go through a board, everybody kind of jams, story jams on it, and different ideas come up, and the energy that gets started builds the boards. It goes over a long process, and it's enough to tear your hair out sometimes.
Yeah.
But
that's really the important process, because it's in those meetings that you actually discover what the story is, how the sequence is going to play, and that's where everybody who is involved in that process, and it's really sort of a handful of people, really gets to understand and know, again, who the characters are and what the story's about and how we kind of continually refocus it.
Of course, everybody contributes, and it gets shaped along the way, but...
Right. But it's a little bit, it's just in terms of filmmaking, where it's different from, let's say, a live-action film where you actually get the actors in front of a camera, you tell them what to do, and they're actually acting it out. It's filmed, and then later it's edited. What we do is sort of in reverse. We actually edit the movie. We write the movie, then edit the movie first in storyboard form, and then once we actually know what the individual shots are, and we actually know each and every shot, so there's no wasted amount of footage, you know exactly how you're telling the story, literally shot by shot, and then you have to go through all the processes of animation and layout and color in order to put that together. So you work sort of from the outside, or from the largest to the smallest. We start with Simba in a secluded glade. He's kind of contemplating life when he looks up and sees the stars and is reminded of his father. He walks quietly out onto the savannah to be alone and sits there contemplating life when he begins to hear a crazy chant.
Sante sana, squash banana, way way do, gumini apana.
He looks back and sees Rafiki, who is
Sante sana, squash
shaking in the
banana,
trees.
way, way, do, gumini apana.
He gets annoyed and he leaves. Rafiki looks out after him as Simba walks along. He comes up to a fallen branch over a pool of water and sits down and looks at his reflection in a little river. And all of a sudden a rock comes splashing in.
Sante sana, squash banana, way way do, gumini apana.
Come on, will you cut it out?
Can't cut it out. It'll grow right back.
So Simba leaves. Oh, crazy little monkey. Would you stop following me? Who are you?
Question is, who are you?
Simba thinks about that for a second. I thought I knew. Now I'm not so sure.
Well, I know who you are. And grabs his ear and pulls him close. Shh, come here. It's a secret. Asante san, squash banana, way we do, gumini apana. And he goes dancing off.
What is that supposed to mean anyway?
It means you're a baboon, and I'm not.
I think you're a little confused.
Wrong. I'm not the one who's confused. You don't even know who you are.
And I suppose you know?
Sure do. You're Mufasa's boy.
Simba looks startled.
He takes off.
He looks back at Rafiki and chases after him.
Woo! It's gone.
And he finds Rafiki sitting in the lotus position at the top of his
Like
rock.
the Zen master.
He's oming, yes. And
Kung Fu
Simba
fan.
comes running up, says, you know my father?
I know your father.
I hate to tell you this, but he died a long time ago.
Nope, wrong again.
He skitters off.
He's alive. And I'll show him to you. You follow Rafiki. Ducks into the bushes. He knows the way. Come on, come on, come on, come on.
Simba comes up to the clearing and looks inside, takes one look back, and then decides to follow after Rafiki. He runs through the jungle, and he finally gets and sees Rafiki.
Hurry up, don't dawdle. Come on, come on.
They start racing through. Simba falls off screen. He falls into a ravine. He leaps out, chasing after him. We see Rafiki is swinging through the jungle. Simba's running to keep up with him, and finally Rafiki stops him.
Stop.
Well, Tim had been around the studio trying to get Evita made, and he was attracted to the project at the time he was working on Aladdin, and of course went on to win an Academy Award for Aladdin. And I think Tim's really the one that's responsible for bringing Elton to the project. We were looking for songwriters and people to pair with Tim Rice, and he said, well, have you ever thought about Elton John? And we hadn't, but when we heard his name, we thought, well, in a sense, this guy is like the tunesmith of the late 20th century. We all grew up with his songs. He's had songs on the charts more than Elvis, and he's this legendary songwriter. So Tim took the project to Elton, and thankfully he was a huge fan of animation and wanted to become involved.
Well, I've never worked before with lyrics first, or at least only on very rare one-off occasions. In all the big projects I've worked on for 25 years, I've always started with the story, which is the key thing, as it is here. Then the composer has written the tunes inspired by the story, and then I've put the lyrics to the tunes. So up until now, I've sort of done the first bit and the last bit, and the composer's done the middle. Now this time, the story comes first again, and that's everybody. I mean, the directors, the producer, the heads of animation, everybody gets together to try and get the best possible story, because everything flows from the story. And then, on The Lion King, I would then write the words of the songs, which is really, at this stage, before it was a tune, it's almost the same as being part of the script. And then that, in turn, has to be more or less approved by everyone concerned. Then that is then given to Elton. And he, after about 35 minutes, comes back with a terrific tune.
Here we go. If I make a mistake, ignore it. From the day we arrive on the planet and blink and step into the sun, there's more to see than can ever be seen, more to do than can ever be done. It was pretty easy writing with him. I mean, like it is when I write with Bernie. We don't really have any, changes of differences of opinion, do we? Not really.
Had no opinions at all, really.
No. I mean, there was no kind of mega fights or anything like that, saying, well, I think it should be like this or it shouldn't be like that. I mean, Tim was there when I wrote most of the songs. A Circle of Life was written on an afternoon up in Oxford Street.
That was, for me, that was an extraordinary experience, because I'd done the lyric. I think I rang Elton on the Monday, because we had the session on the Thursday, and said, look, I think I can get the lyric to you by Monday afternoon. Give you 3 days. And he said, no, bring it along on Thursday. I was actually lying. I hadn't quite finished the lyric. So I finished the lyric on Thursday morning and went into the studio and just watched Elton write what I think is one of his best tunes. It was absolutely staggering. It just evolved.
Yeah.
Till we find our place on the path unwinding, it's the circle life.
Yeah? What do you think?
The 1-2 punch that we had on Lion King musically was having Elton John and Tim Rice as our composer, and having Hans Zimmer as our score composer. Hans, who did the music for Backdraft and Thelma and Louise and Driving Miss Daisy and Rain Man, is this wonderful film composer who brings tremendous emotion to the score. And he was also a student of African music, and I think really appreciates the patina of emotion that music can lay over the top of a score. So you hear not only in the arrangements that he's done on songs like Circle of Life or Be Prepared, the ethnic African inspiration that he's put into the songs, but also in his score. Music is such a storytelling device, and he's been able to layer over the top of the story that the directors have created this wonderful sense of storytelling. And so in that way, Hans is kind of the final storyteller, underlining for the audience the emotions of the piece.
It was his idea to put the African feel in Circle of Life. It was written quite as a straight song, so it's, in the movie it's like a chant. On the record it's not, even though we've incorporated some of his choral things in my track. It was his idea, I think, to put the African slant in it. And it's really made a difference to the song and the opening of the movie. It fits in beautifully.
A number of people went to Africa to record an authentic African choir singing
in
throughout-
Zulu.
In Zulu, throughout all of the score, not just the songs, not just what Elton did, but actually through the underscore of the film too, to give it a real authentic texture.
You know, I take every note seriously, and I color my tunes in, you know. It's very much like an animation process. I do a little black and white sketch on the piano, and then, you know, then I color it in. Just how the animators work. So it's very easy for me to talk their language and vice versa. And Don, of course, used to play in a pit orchestra, and both Rob and Roger are intensely musical, you know. And I for the first time, I'm working with people where I really find there's no gulf between the two disciplines in a way, you know, but we do sort of the same thing. It's just one is eyes and one is ears.
We use a lot of live action footage of lions running, walking, and hunting, and everyday life. There's a ton of documentaries that we were able to use, and there's some actual lions that came into the studio, and that really helped. To actually get right up front, close, a couple feet away from a male lion was pretty intimidating, and that feeling really came. You never forget that. It's always there in the back of your mind. Well, Mufasa in the story, he had to feel like the strongest lion in the pride, and when I was looking at Joseph, I was thinking, well, I've got to get this type of strength into these drawings, and in the drawing, I would exaggerate some certain anatomical things like the shoulders and the arms and the size of the head and things more than you would see in nature, because that would help to sort of sell the difference between him and the other lions.
One of the first things I like to get is a photograph of the voice talent, if at all possible. And in this case, Jonathan Taylor Thomas, I had received one of his black and white publicity photos. And right away, there was some really nice, appealing qualities to Jonathan that I thought would be really nice if I could get some of those elements into Simba. Not that Jonathan looks like a lion cub, but there was just you know, just there's an appealing quality to Jonathan that I really wanted to get into that. That coupled with the fact that we did a lot of research, actually hands-on touching of real lions. We had Jim Fowler down from the Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom show, and he brought in lion cubs and a full-grown lion to the studio, and we actually got to observe these lions playing, and actually afterwards got to touch and pet them. So it was a combination of you know, the actual animal, the lion, and its unique qualities, coupled with some of the nice appeal and the character that I saw in Jonathan, that I really started, you know, mixing the two together, as well as then putting my own ideas and of, you know, the acting and the performance into the character, and that all kind of, you know, comes out as Simba, hopefully.
Early on, the directors liked the way Mufasa was turning out. So we wanted to make sure that Simba looked like he could be, when he grows older, he could look kind of like Mufasa, not as filled out, you know, but still graphically of the same family. And at the same time, we wanted to make sure that the adult Simba looked like an adult version of Cub Simba.
To me, as an animator, I really feel like an actor, even though we work with a pencil. We don't put ourselves in front of the screen or the camera. But it really is acting. People ask me sometimes, oh, you have to do all these drawings, and aren't you getting bored? And it really, we don't think about drawing, we think about acting. You know, I have one sheet of paper, I do a sketch, a second sheet of paper, and I'm trying to figure out who this character is and what he's going through emotionally at this point. And of course I work for a director, and we talk the scene over, and we go through the motion of what might happen. And even though we have story people who come up with the material, we've got the voice, you know, Jeremy Irons does his part, but then I come in and I really put a performance on the screen. And for a character like Scar, it is an animal. So you have to bring animal qualities, a real lion walk and how a lion moves and their mannerisms. Plus, you have to humanize that and have real facial expressions that a human has. So it's a funny combination of things. It's different than animating a human character. And I've had experience with humans mostly, you know, even though I've done characters like Roger Rabbit or Mickey Mouse, but they are human characters. They walk on two legs, and the actions and acting is very humanized. This was supposed to be different. These were real lions who walk with lion weight and have lion mannerisms, and yet you still are supposed to portray a humanized personality. And I remember thinking, starting out with the animation, oh my God, you don't have hands to work with. Hands are so important to express a character's emotions. They say so much, and you don't have that with these characters. So what do? Well, you concentrate much more on the overall body attitude. You know, is the character sad, or is he upright? You know, is he suspicious? So the overall body attitude is much more important. Also, the angle of the head, the face, you know, says something. So you have fewer things to work with, but I think it can be as powerful in the end if you really understand the scene and get the acting right. To me, a villain always only works if he's also interesting. That's more tough. You can have him beat people around and have him call people names and that sort of thing, and just show him doing evil things, but he has to be an interesting person, an interesting character. So that's what you're really working at, is like, who is this guy? You know, how does he feel about himself and the other characters? What are his likes and dislikes? What he would have for breakfast? You're trying to come up with a very whole personality. You build mannerisms. You know, you really, it's much more beyond than what you see on the screen in the way we analyze the character. So I always thought that a villain should be very, very interesting.
I came onto the film quite late. I already had a whole mass of supporting stuff that was already done for me. But I basically came in and finalized the design for the character. And that basically came out of a wish to try and make a mandrill, which is what he is, He's actually a sort of mutated mandrill. He's a mandrill with a tail. They don't really have tails, but he has a tail. They're really, really odd-looking animals, and if you just draw them straight, people don't believe you. So to try and make that grotesque face look believable was like the first challenge, I think, for me, to try and get these strange blue stripes working in the design, and so they could actually move when he talked, and they would actually appear appealing and not so grotesque, even though he has to appear slightly crazy. They have this sort of strange posture, which we don't have because we're kind of used to it. So that was something that I thought could really make him still look like a monkey, even though he was acting like a person, you know.
Pumbaa's kind of a friendly guy that really, they need each other. Pumbaa needs Timon, Timon needs Pumbaa. They're buddies, they're pals. They're kind of like Lenny and George from Grapes of Wrath, you know, the big dumb guy and the little guy that's always in charge and tells him what to do. And, Pumbaa has the physicality to stick up for Timon, and Timon has the brains to guide them in whatever they're going to do. So.
Yeah, he's the one who thinks he knows where everything's going to be, and he just, no, you just listen to me, Pumbaa, I'll tell you what it's going to be like. And then Pumbaa has his moments where he comes across a lot more intelligent than you think he'll be. So, I mean, Timon just likes to think he's in control, when sometimes he's not.
We work very closely together since we share a room. I'll start a scene maybe because Pumbaa is such a large shape in the scene, and he's really kind of a walking stage for Timon, since Timon's always on top of Pumbaa's nose or on his back or something like that. I'll start off by animating Pumbaa, but I'll always show Mike before I start. We'll act it out for each other.
Yeah, it's usually Tony's the one going first because of the size and composition and everything. You want to. If I was to go first, I might put him in a position where he can't draw all of Pumbaa in there where you need to see him. So it's usually Tony first, then me, and sometimes it goes back and forth because if there's a lot of interplay with them physically, then a lot of times it'll just mean I'll do my little bit, give it to him, he'll do it, and then give it back. And
because it's kind of difficult when you're doing comedy, especially with two characters working closely together. Just like any comedian duo, I'm sure they have to work out a choreography, a routine, if you will, to a scene. And that's what we have to do, only we're doing it 24 frames per second. We're doing it
really, a little slower to get that spontaneity at really slow motion.
Yeah.
Jim Fowler came to visit us, and he brought a hornbill. So I got to touch the hornbill, you know, not too much because it was a wild hornbill. Then, but a lot of observation and up close stuff, and you know, so you could see every feather, and I mean, not that I draw every feather, but it's nice to see everything, and you know, right there in front of you. So we learned all this stuff about mussels and what mussel does what, and there's a lot of correspondence between animal bodies and human bodies. So that was good because you had a kind of a framework that said, okay, so you can use your own self as a sort of a model for the way this bird is going to work. It probably looks funny to somebody else, but it really helps for me to get up and move through my scenes the way Zazu, the way I see him moving through the scene, so that I can kind of internalize that stuff, because a lot of the way I work comes, I mean, I gather this intellectual stuff, but then a lot of it, you have to like get it into you and then bring it out of you, so it comes out in this feeling, as opposed to okay, well I've got to raise the right foot and move it a quarter of an inch and put it down again. It's not like that. It's like you get all this stuff into your own blood, and then it just comes out.
There was a performance of the actors who recorded the voices that really kind of nails down what the character will do in a scene. Whoopi's character came on as somebody who's particularly scheming all the time. She's the leader of the gang, and it's true about actual hyenas. They're led usually by females, by what is known as an alpha female. So her character was always cool, always scheming, very rarely lost composure, and so on. Chi-Chi's character was kind of the opposite, you know, very volatile, barely ever able to speak in whispers, very on all the time, high pitch. And Ed was sort of a comic relief. I think the directors always thought that Ed was a guy who knew the score but pretended to be an idiot. So, you know, that's kind of how I treated it.